Board games, board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing, and over there your eyes will chance upon the person whose name is John, who instigated in some ways the conversation about gender in designing ways. And over there is Catherine, who makes game pieces you can't be eaten. And we have chatted a couple of times. I think you can go back for the old rat times. Rhymes. Then below me is Tally, the one who kickstarted a game recently. We're going to all talk about gender and diversity in sex and gender I'm sorry, but board games and gender and design is what we're talking about. Board games and gender and design. I'm not going to shout. Hey, good morning, everyone. And good morning, Alex. I am, as you know, Bez, and it is bath time because when is bath time? It's just a state of mind. I'm not saying that everyone has to be in the bath whilst watching this show for the next 3 months, but if you want to, that is your prerogative. You can take a bath, whether it's evening or whether it's morning or whatever. You can always have a bath. Coming up today, we are talking about gender in design with Jon Chambers. Talita Rhein, I'm going to put you over there, actually, Tally. Catherine Morgan. And we're going to have Jessica Jane Sankey joining us in a wee bit after Jess has gotten down from the mountain and had a wee bit of preparation. But let's all start off with brilliant thing, what's the little thing which is brilliant? And I thought that to start it off, let's talk about equality. Now, why do you think that equality is a brilliant thing? John?
I feel like it's such a self-evident thing. Almost like why is world peace a brilliant thing? It's not so much that equality is brilliant, it's that inequality is terrible. If that makes sense. It's just, equality is what happens when there's no inequality.
Yeah, equality is brilliant because it's the only way that we can kind of bring some balance to this world, and it's very important to work for it. But also equality has to be together with justice, because only equality is not sufficient. Justice has to be there.
And as well as the sort of self-evident loveliness of equality and the negativity of inequality, it's also a matter of exploiting the resources that we have to the best ability. If we have equality, then we make the best use of everybody's talents, and that's a wonderful thing.
That's some amazing points. And so in the chat, feel free to tell us. Hello, Sates, we're just talking about equality, and so feel free to tell us why you think that equality is a brilliant thing. I mean, for me, it's, not just about those advantages that you have, it's also about how you feel in terms of when you're going there. If you are presented with inequality, you are less maybe willing to give because you're like, hey, why should I bother? I'm not going to get anything out of it. And it's also about having those same advantages and possibilities and room for growth as everyone else. So yeah, let's move on to recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So yesterday I did play a quick game of Mind Out with Layla, who came over, which was lovely. It was If I had to give it a quick 5-word review, sadly unsatisfying. That's only 2 words. I don't need the other 3. The other recent highlight that I've had has just been, having some cheap fruit from the market. So there we go. Those are my recent highlights. And let's go round again and everyone share. Even if you're in the chat, type in what are your recent highlights. John.
Oh, is it my turn? Yep. Okay, one of the recent highlights is right over here. That's my son. He's fairly recent. He's born on the 28th. So that's a recent highlight. I did another one of these talks after he was born, so I don't know if he counts within the time window. And also a game that I've been playing a lot while I was in the hospital, and also lots of complications with his mother afterwards, but she's getting better. It's really great. But the game that got me through the hospital and my mobile phone was Kingdom. I really recommend that. Kingdom, the subtitle is New Lands. It's a side-scrolling city builder. And I didn't even think, I've seen people try to do it. It always comes out terribly. I didn't think it was possible to actually make a good one. But yeah, get it on iOS. It's brilliant.
Well, my recent highlight is that Dogo Dash is finally funded officially. Yay! So I think that is the most exciting thing that happened to me. Like making my first game and my first crowdfunding in my first pandemic. This is like check mark. I'm very proud of it. Thank you, everyone. Everyone here, this community is amazing.
Yeah, you've really blown that out of the water. Well done, Tally.
Oh, that's fantastic. Similar highlight, really. Business has absolutely gone absolutely crazy. I've been running around and I cannot keep up with the orders that I've got coming in, which is just so life affirming. And it just makes me feel so happy that, the thing that I thought was a crazy idea 2 years ago is finally everybody else has realized that it's a cool thing. So I'm really, really chuffed to bits with that. And I've also been playing quite a lot of Hades on the Nintendo Switch, which is a really cool little game, and I'm really, really super enjoying it in my very, very small amounts of downtime. So that's been great.
I keep hearing amazing things about that game. And a quick hello to Nicholas. It's lovely to see you. And Rob Harper. And hello to Paul, who says that they hope everybody is okay. And it's like, I hope that as we move into the questionably quick questions, which might be a little bit faster than usual, I would like to just remind everyone to be respectful, and a big shout out to everyone for contributing in advance. But let's start off with the typical question where I ask, where exactly are you, city, country, and what time is it? I myself am in London, UK, and it is 10:09 a.m.
Okay, I am in Adelaide, South Australia. So we're experiencing a lockdown at the moment, so we'll have to be indoors, which changes my lifestyle very, very little. This is my wool shed where I sell a yarn and spinning fibre at the lowest prices in Australia. This is my son. This is a separate construction from my house. So once this is gone and I go to bed, I'm going to have to go outside and hope it's not raining.
I'm in Berlin, Germany, and now it's 11:10 in the morning, and I'm in my living room now.
And I am in Berkeley, Gloucestershire, which is, for those who are not based in the UK, is sort of directly to the left of London if you travel to the west. And I am in my kitchen with my work fridge right behind me, just waiting for me to crack on as soon as we're done with this. And it is 10 in the morning now.
Because it's apparently took us 1 minute to go through that. And I would like to give a shout out to Quality Beast, who's a fellow Berliner. And we've got a quick questionable question from for Tally. When are you designing a game about cats? Do you have anything in the works?
Well, I always think about making a cat exclusive game, but it's still the ideas. But yeah, follow me. The updates will come.
I mean, it feels like we should just join forces, and then you take care of the dog side, I'll take care of the cat side. But yeah, I wanted to ask you a somewhat serious question for this time of the show. Why did you want to talk about this topic? Let's keep going ground and start again with Jon.
Because I've made a game that bumps into this very issue. And I'm a bit nervous being here because it kind of makes me the villain of the piece. There are, I have made a knowingly problematic game, and it's just a matter of I'm not going to make it unproblematic. It's not going to work. But should I be in damage control right now? Are there certain lines that I should work within and never cross? Or is there rules about you should never, ever, ever promote to this group? Keep it away from that, So really, I'm here to learn.
When I was designing Dogo Dash, this was something that was very specific for me. I wanted to have a gender-free character, and we have 5 types of character in Dogo Dash. And one of the type is this person that has, it's non-binary, so to say. So depending on the perspective of the player. And it's great because I've been playing with many, many queer people, which is like all my friends and family, to be honest. And depending on the group, they call them or she or he. And it's very crazy to see this gender fluidness from a character that is just designed, it's just a drawing. There's not like nothing signing or pointing to a specific gender. But anyway, people, including kids, they look and they say, it's a he, it's a she, it's a they. And to play with this in a respectful way. So I asked many people before doing this, but it's a very, very relevant theme. And I talked to many people about gender. So I thought it would be relevant to talk to you all about it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally very interested in it as a subject, both as a designer and also I studied history at university, and a lot of that, because it was contemporary history, was very much the evolution of societal attitudes to gender. So this is such a relevant topic. It's something I've always been fascinated about, gender fluidity, societal attitudes, progression. And I think that this is something I really love to talk about, and I think it's a really interesting forum for it. So,
and hopefully we will be able to have some, good conversation. I know that everyone here is super respectful, and hello to Ben Osteen, who's asking for a game called Cats and Dogs that we need to design, and it must be super early in LA. I can barely even imagine, like, is that 5:14? Why are you, I don't know, what time is it in LA? But yeah, I hope that, again, feel free to make comments. I am sorry that I'm not going to put everything on the screen, but I do appreciate everything that's being said. Now, before we go to the main topic, let's ask at least a couple of lighter questions. So let's me shuffle people around and ask Catherine, when did you last play a board game? What was the best thing about it?
It's been so long. I have been working probably sort of 12, 14, 16-hour days for the last 3 weeks, and I am I'm shattered, and I haven't had any time to play board games, which is sad, and it's really sad, but it's, you know, it's also brilliant. The last thing I played was probably the things that we were talking about last time that I was on this podcast. I haven't played a board game since then, except with my children. So I've had a little go at, there's a little sort of Pokemon starter board game for Pokemon the card game. So I've played that with my daughter. It was her birthday, so I took a whole day off work, which really hurt me, but it was it was lovely. And we played a few. She got a huge haul of board games for her birthday, which was just the best thing ever. She loves board games. Lucky for her, lucky for us. So she got some really great games, and I cannot wait to open them. I've promised myself I'm stopping work on the 15th of December, and that's it. We're all board games all the way after that.
My turn, same question. Yep.
Last game.
Yeah, last game. By the way, this is going to sound scripted, okay, because it couldn't be so perfect. It was Fog of Love. It was actually Fog of Love, which is the game that completely nailed this whole issue. They did it very well. Some might argue too well, and I haven't yet decided if I am some or not.
I've been playing mostly on Tabletopia. I don't know if it counts, but the last game I played was Double Dash with Mark from Tabletopia. It was the last time I played a board game, and I played Double Dash. And before it, was doing testing for some friends in Brazil, some Afro games. Today is the Black People Consciousness Day in Brazil. So we were doing a lot of Afro games and play testing. And yeah, there would be like the last games I played before Double Dash.
Now, let's get really. I actually realised that I didn't answer this myself. Oh yeah, it was the game with Layla last night. Because whilst we are in lockdown, I am lucky enough to have 3 people in my life that I am able to play games with. So yeah, case in point, last night I got to play a quick game of Mind Out, and we might play Manhattan Project, which I've not yet played tonight. We will see how that goes. I've played Energy Empire, had a lot of fun with it, so we're going to go back to Manhattan Project. Now we ask, rice or noodles? For me, rice is the better observant thing, but without noodles, I wouldn't be able to have instant noodles. But so if I had to make the choice right now, you know, and still, I think I would have to go noodles just because it allows me to have sometimes cheap food. Kath?
Rice. I'm going to keep it short. Rice.
John?
Oh, I got to alternate. I can't. You can't make me choose. Can't make me choose.
As a good Brazilian, I would go with rice because this is what we eat every day, rice and beans. And I'm a very huge fan of rice, but I love noodles as well.
And Maya says, rice, noodles, no question. But then everybody's going with rice, and Maya's just disappointed in everyone. So let's move on to ask cats or poodles. I'm going to choose cats.
Cats. Always cats. I'm not a fan of the poodle anyway.
I'm not allergic to poodles, so they win.
Difficult to say. Can I skip?
If you must, I mean. And so, finally, paint or pencil doodles. I'm going to choose. Oh, I hate this one. This is the most difficult one for me. Everyone else go and then I will make the difficult decision. Kath.
That's really hard, isn't it? I think paint for me. I love a bit of paint.
For me, it's pencil all the way, and that's just because when I need to get an idea across, I don't need the color. I just need the structure of it because I'm not an artist, but sometimes I need to sketch for my artist, and I'm never going to paint and mix all of the paint together. No, it's a stick figure. He's doing this. You make it happen.
I'm with John. Also because I'm not an artist, so yeah, that's easier for me to work with a pencil.
I mean, I've been thinking about this for like a good however long this has been, and I could rules lawyer this and say, well, if I cut out pencil doodles, well, I can still use pens. But let's assume that pens were part of the pencil doodles, because where do pens fit in? If pens are just not allowed at all, then I would go with the paints, because I want to have some color sometimes. And without paints, that would be so sad. But if it's like, okay, pens are parts of the pencil doodles, and like I'm allowed colored pens as part of that, I think I would go with pencils and pens, because even though I've got more love for the paints, seriously, am I going to sit down and paint like with the regularity that I would be happy to sit down and do stuff with pens? You know what I mean? It's just easier to sit down and get started. But having said that, maybe that's... Oh, it's such a hard decision. This is the meanest question. I don't know why I asked this. I'm sorry. And Nicholas says that we want oodles of noodles and doodles of poodles. How about doodles of poodles with oodles of noodles? Because doodles of noodles might not be as good, y'all. But anyway. And we've got a lot of different comments saying, okay, pencils if I'm allowed pens. And hello, Vicky, that's Vicky Dalton. Sorry, maybe I'm making you embarrassed now. But yeah, it's Wiki Vic, so you know who Vicky Dalton is. So let's get started with the main topic. And as we go forward, I do have a list of questions. If you do have any questions, then chime them in. I can't promise to get to them. I will try my best, but feel free to interject with any comments and I will flash them up on screen. Before we get to the main topic, I would like to ask you, John, to give us a 1-minute description about your game and exactly what the setting is and how it works, so that people will have some awareness of what you're doing.
Okay, so just to see how completely deeply baked in the problematicness is, the very core heart of the game is based on a dating coach that once bragged that he had male and female students, which is really rare. Most of them just find guys who are looking for girls. But he said, I've got male and female students. Although after doing this, he said, what I find is that they want different things. All of my male students just, how can I be more attractive? How can I get her? But women have got this question of, I've got 4 different guys who have proposed to me and I don't know which proposal to accept. And this is a problem that none of his male students have ever even heard of. And so just that kind of contrast between, you got one group of people trying to be the best they can be and another group of people trying to work out which one is the best. And so from that core basis, I made an entire game around that. And so the game is made. It's just getting the art. It's going to be kickstarted as soon as the art's finished. But, it did get a lot of pushback saying, well, why can't you make it gender neutral? It's just because it's not gender neutral. So yeah, that's where I am.
Sorry, that's a bit of context and so just a little bit more about everyone. For those who aren't aware, I've had everyone on the show before a few times. For those who are new, I invited everyone on to talk about this conversation because I just find everyone who's on here to be an intelligent, insightful person who's willing to speak well and also listen, which is the important thing. And hopefully we will have Jess popping in anytime soon. And I want to make this note to the audience that we talked about what is appropriate, where Jon said, well, appropriate for what purpose? And so I'm assuming that by mass producing a game, what you're trying to do is raise the net happiness. I know that's a utilitarian form of what is good is not like maybe, you know, it has its own issues, you could say. But broadly speaking, I'm assuming that people want to do some sort of good, like that you want to have your game make people happy and have people enjoy it and not make too many, not bring more unhappiness than happiness. And if it is, even if a lot of people would really enjoy a game, if it's actually then, you know, we've got to also think about what this game is forcing people to do, like what this game is encouraging people to do, because games do change behaviors, games do shape our minds. And so I am assuming that people are not going for profits above all else. I'm assuming that people are not going for ego trip above all else, that the purpose in terms of fit for purpose for these games is that these games can be essentially, not to overstate it, but yes, a force for good, let's say. And so that's my kind of assumption. We're not going to discuss whether games should be or can be a force for good. We're just going to take that as stated. And so let's start off. We can just go one thing per person. And let's talk about what gender imbalances or issues exist, or why is it an issue? Let's start off with Kath.
Yeah, I mean, I think that increasingly the board games community is better gender balanced than it has traditionally been. It's certainly a much more diverse community who are active, and I think also just the end consumers are more diverse than they've ever been. As such, when you're talking to people as a group, I think it's ever more important to speak to them, not just assuming that they're probably male, which I think traditionally was the way. You know, we have a lot of very old games rattling around on the shelf, you know, ones that I've rebought from my childhood. And when you read through the rules, it is very, very clear that they are speaking to a you know, sort of cis white male. It is absolutely phrased in that way. There's also the design aspects, which are very much targeted at that group. You know, the themes, the aspirations that are presented. You know, you are a male explorer, you are a hero, you are all these things that males have aspired to be, maybe a train driver or whatever else. Where female roles, traditionally female roles, are presented, it's in this very sort of non-aspirational way. You know, it's very sort of princessy and all that sort of unpleasantness, and that is really sort of come a very, very long way. And I think that if we can keep moving in that direction, that would be great. But yeah.
Yeah, also, it's not just an old issue. Just recently, I was bragging to someone about how great Century Spice was, and I pulled out the rule book to talk about how well written the rule book is. And he, shit. Okay, this is not a well-written rule book, you know? And that was a game that won awards, and they slipped up there. And if the award-winning games are slipping up, I mean, this is not a design choice. I'm really, the way I read it, there's no way someone's thinking, well, we do need to have a male-gendered pronoun. No, there's nothing artistic about that decision. It was an accident, and it still happened. And there are plenty more. There was Shut Up and Sit Down Reviewed a Game. That was just, they called up the designer and they said, I've noticed that in your artwork, you've depicted something like 30 different males and 0 females. And the producer said, oh, did I? Completely missed everyone. Now, if it is an intentional design choice, I have a lot of respect for that, but that it's accidental. People are doing it by mistake, and that's not forgivable. If you want to do this, do it with intention. Do it because you've got a good reason to, but don't accidentally do it. And by the way, I've just filled this up about the problems of gender inequality in board game design. I haven't even touched on gaming groups. I haven't touched on employment. I haven't touched on foreign countries. I haven't touched on religion. I haven't touched on children or anything. This is just game design, and already I can talk an ear off about gender inequality.
Yeah, it is for me like a work to think that the games are like a mirror of the society. So if it's so natural, like, and so normal to use the pronoun he, that people use it like without even acknowledging that they are just genderizing, that means that in the society this is broadly accepted and broadly used. And the problem is not the only changing game, but maybe changing games so we can change the society, you know, like trying to play around so we can work together for change. Because if we are just passive and doing what is mainstream and what is openly used, then we are going to get stuck. In the moment, for example, we have a group of designers, Brazilian designers, and I am the only woman that is actively like publishing a game now. And I don't believe I'm the only game designer in Brazil. And I'm not even living in Brazil. I'm just Brazilian living abroad. And it's for me like unimaginable. Where are those women? Like, why are they not making games? I don't know, but I know that the society accepts this as normal, but I don't. I think they are talented women and they have to find their space and be heard. But they are not going to naturally come out of nowhere and say, hey, I made a game. They need to get invited. They need to be included. And not only women, all genders, I mean, here. But we are in a society that of the power and the relations and the pronouns are mostly male. So we have to kind of fight it.
Now, whilst Alex makes a really good point that, yes, as we are going to depict ourselves in whatever we produce, I mean, back in the day, I know someone said this about my drawing, that you're going to, if you just draw a random face, it's naturally going to look a little bit more like you. So as we have, you know, a certain type of person making games, that will lead to a certain type of person being catered for and a certain type of person being represented. And I feel like, as John maybe alluded to, this is an entirely separate conversation about, you know, the structural problems within the games industry. Today, if we can keep it more towards the problems within the creation of the games and what we can do as games publishers, writers, rulebook editors, whatever. And lots of love to Paul, and of course, fighting for Gender Neutral Day. And I just linked to my article from a few years ago where even Magic the Gathering, thanks to, I believe it was the Chicago Style Guide, making day an acceptable way to have a third-person singular day is now acceptable, according to the Chicago Style Guide. Now it's part of Magic the Gathering. And in a game where there are so many rules lawyers, where everyone is fighting to get potential, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in a single match, you know, if there was any inaccuracy or any potential for confusion, now it boils my blood, figuratively speaking, obviously, when there are actually people who do this deliberately. John, you say people don't do this deliberately, but there are examples of rule sheets where people say, in this rule sheet, we use he to refer to people of both genders. And it's like, no, that's not good enough. You could have just said they. And that is no more confusing. Like the point that I'm not saying, oh, Magic the Gathering does it, therefore it's brilliant. But like, if Magic the Gathering does it and people are fighting for, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, then you can do it in your game. Anyway, and Maya's talking about the patriarchic society. We've got Quality Beast, thank you for working hard on this topic. So are talking about gender neutral names, and also not just Western name, because for example, I suggested Alex, Sam, and Jay, but then other names such as Farah, which I didn't realize was gender neutral. I mean, Camille to me sounds more feminine, but yeah, all these things that where we all are also not I mean, this is really good that you're thinking not just about gender diversity, but also cultural diversity. So, but yeah, Catherine, do you have anything to add? Let's just go around before we finish off this question. What has you seen, and why is it an issue?
I think that it comes back to us, rather than mirroring the state of society as it stands, we need to be, as game designers, active in progressing things. You know, it's true to say that in our society at the moment, the word he is generally reflective of people. That is a linguistic thing. That is, you know, classically how one refers to a person. You say he, and that is sort of accepted as the way things are. I think, though, that we need to move that along rather than just accepting it and including that in our rules, rather than just, you know, accepting that we will have, you know, maybe 4 male characters and 2 female characters, is the classic, isn't it? And maybe 1 person of colour. Then we can actually say, well, no, that's not good enough. We are going to show you what is possible. We're going to create a new accepted norm, and people who play games will receive that, and they will then hopefully mirror that in their daily life. And we can actually be instrumental as an industry in progressing the way that people think.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat your question from before?
So it's just the same question. What issues exist, and why is it an issue? Why is all of this an issue?
Now, you mentioned before that it makes your blood boil when there's, you know, some kind of intentionality behind it. But I'd take the opposite viewpoint of, you know, like when they've got an addendum that's mentioned, by the way, something about gender, I can at least see that they thought about it. And I've got a lot more respect for someone making a conscious effort, even if they make the wrong choice, but to make the choice with thought rather than not thinking about it. It's just, okay, he, you know, as a secondary thing. And yeah, I do think that, and sometimes someone will make a choice that I disagree with, but I really respect that they took the time to make that choice. Sometimes there will be a game where the gender ratio is not 50-50, but they might say, yes, but we went through the historical records, and in this time period, this percentage of soldiers were women, and that's the thing that, you know, so long as there's some kind of basis for what the ratio is, don't pick a ratio out of the air. Just think about your ratio and have something behind it. And if you've got absolutely nothing behind it, make it 50-50.
Yeah, I believe that the problem is that I think someone already said that patriarchy and sexism is already in the society. So we are passively being already sexist is already waiting he and not they, and we have to like think about it and consider it when we do stuff, so we can like take the decisions like for this demographics it makes sense to use he, for these demographics it makes sense to use they, for these demographics it makes sense to use she, but always with a purpose, not only like I will use he or him because this is what everyone else is doing and I don't want to think about it, so I will just do what everyone else is doing. Like, this is not a good way of thinking, and it will definitely not bring any change.
I think that in the chat, people are talking about Lehrer versus Lehrerin in German. I don't know how to pronounce this, but Igrak versus Igrachika. Sorry, I'm butchering that. But yeah, it's for sure there are problems in certain languages where you can't have gender neutrality, and Xate, who feels like they need to clarify that they are female, says that they find he actually a little bit less confusing than they, but of course the best is you. I mean, to me, I understand what you're saying, John, that they've made that choice, but I would almost rebut that and say sometimes it's a lazy choice. It's a way to dismiss it. If you say that, hey, there were more men than women in this place, well, were there really? And is this a historical game? If it is, then fair enough. If, like, have you actually done that research to double check these facts? Or is it just that the women weren't reported properly? Because sometimes that's the way that history works. And I think it's important to, if I get it, I have siblings who struggle with gender neutral language and really want to use he as a gender neutral thing, which again, I find problematic. And in some ways, this is maybe something that we could devote an entire thing, because there's obviously an inaccessibility issue if some people are struggling with that, but there's an inaccessibility issue the other way. And at what point do we need to say, okay, this is the world that we would like to have, and the media that we produce does shape our world. So for me, that is the ultimate reason to make a game that reflects not necessarily some disparity that exists, unless we are genuinely bringing light to this disparity. But if it's a game for entertainment, maybe something that we would like to see in the world, if you know what I mean, represent what you would like to see. That's the way I approach it. And yeah, Scott says they managed to entirely avoid third-person pronouns for players in a rulebook, use actual names of people and reuse those names. You can use short three-letter names and use second person, and don't do this or that. So, going on, I want to ask, like, we've not even talked about, I mean, we're concentrating on language, which seems like a rabbit hole, but it's also about the theme. It's also about the setting. It's like those things that Kath mentioned earlier on. It's about the chainmail bikinis, which thankfully are dying out. It's about, the lack of agency and the lack of representation in fantasy games. Now, have you ever been personally affected by gendered stereotypes or language? I'm just going to take the low-hanging fruit and use the rule sheets where, playing 22-1B Baker Street, a fairly recent printing by Gibson's Games, and I flagged them up on Twitter about this, saying, hey, we played this there was no one at the table who identifies as male, and in the rulebook it says one person picks up a card and he reads it aloud. And then we kind of joked about it, saying, well, we need to get George to come over here so that George can read it aloud. But I know it's this microaggression. I know that it's not a big deal, but it's like, when this is just yet another reminder that this is who this game is for, that is the issue. So let's skip that. And John, can you talk about anything else?
I will agree with you about the lazy choice, but a lazy choice consciously made is still less lazy than the choice you didn't even realize you made. That's all I've got to say on the previous question.
Kath, have you ever been affected?
I think I've been so affected that I don't even really realize that I have been affected. I think my entire mindset is so geared to how games have been. I've been playing games since I was quite young, and that's quite a long time. So I grew up in a fantasy setting, in a sci-fi setting. I grew up adjusting my mindset and adjusting my identity and my sense of self to the roles that were presented to me in the games that I played. So, you know, I sort of viewed myself differently because of how femininity was presented in games. And I think that that is so endemic and so deep rooted that I can't even put my finger on how I've been affected by that. You know, I can't come to you and say, oh, there was this time when I played a game and I was sad because I felt marginalized or I felt pushed out. I have never felt like that. But I think the reason I haven't felt like that is that I have unconsciously adopted those norms. I have unconsciously altered my stereotypes and my way of looking at things. And it's only now that I'm beginning to sort of readjust myself and readjust my own preferences. You know, I always chose the male characters. I always chose to not play a female because I didn't like the way that they were represented. So I was always, you know, choosing these different options. And so I think perhaps to answer the question, I probably have been very deeply affected, but I couldn't really tell you exactly how.
For me, it was a kind of pushing me away from the female characters and making me identify with the male characters, and also seeing myself like starting to feel that something was wrong. Like, I am a woman, but I don't look like this woman at all, and I wouldn't act like them. Like, they don't represent me. And then I was feeling like marginalized because I'm a kind of woman that is not represented in game at all. Or maybe a male character has characteristics that are similar to mine, but it's a man, and usually a white man, which has nothing to do with me. So it pushes me away in the sense that like to get to the story, like I was mostly playing as like something alienated and not getting so involved. It causes a lot of frustration and self-hatred, and I've been going through it my whole life, like self-hatred and low self-esteem and very low self-confidence. And developing, I felt that it wasn't my fault. Like, it was nothing wrong with me. It's just the society. They don't see me. I'm invisible. So I started to do things that I could make myself visible in some ways. And I started very, very late in my life. I'm not saying I'm old, not at all. But I wish I could have seen this before, as a kid, as a teenager, and not now. I'm 35 already. Like, I lived my whole life in crisis, and it would spare a lot of time and therapy and money if I could have this self-confidence before, you know? Bess, you're muted.
Thank you. You've talked a wee bit about how this has affected you. I'm sorry about my technical faux pas. Other than what we've already mentioned, is there any other issues with gender stereotypes that you want to flag on? Sally?
There are many issues. The topic is very broad. Maybe if we can start over talking about like the way that we are giving the instructions to players, if the gendering is actually necessary or not, and then the way that we are developing games, making games, and then the whole society thing. But I think the most important would be like when is gender actually relevant and why? Like, this would be my...
Jon, do you have anything that you would like to flag up as an issue before we move on from the negatives?
It's such a trivial thing. I don't even want to say it, but just, you know, you mentioned the chainmail bikini. It's like, well, let's just bring in the chainmail loincloths. That's fine. Let's do it both sides. And let's do that. Like, a lot of the time I hear of this horrible thing that's done to women. Like, let's do that to men too. There's two ways of achieving gender equality here.
And of course, even if the men are wearing loincloths, if it is big, beefy, muscly men, but the women are all, put into a position of vulnerability, it's not quite equitable, is it? Because it's about that position of power versus that almost fragility. And so if you want to make it equal, you've got to have, not only you've got to have some women with actual muscles who would have developed these muscles by swinging these swords and whatnot.
And some fragile men.
Yes, for sure. If we want to do that, and like for those who haven't seen the butt and boobs shots, because there was a thing in comics where you've got these panels where both the butt and the boob, like both cleavage and the butt of someone is visible in the same pose, which is anatomically difficult, let's say. But, they make it work. And it's like, let's kind of just redraw this as Spider-Man or people like that. And yeah, meant to just show how ridiculous it is, or Batman. It was, you can't do that. But Kath, what issues would you like to address?
I think sort of following on a little bit from what Jon just said, I think there's a bit of an issue with the sexualization of games. Now, that is a topic in itself, but I think when we're talking about gender, if we're talking about sort of, the classic chainmail bikini thing, and now we want to sort of talk about the chainmail loincloth, I would argue that we should get away from that whole thing. There's really no place for that sort of thing in the average game. Sure, you can have a design space that is for that, and that's wonderful. But unfortunately, it seems that these stereotypical gender sexual roles leach into pretty much every game. And it's, becoming more common for it not to happen. But, classically, it really was every game. And actually, I don't want to have to tackle that in an average game. I am actually entering a fantasy space. I am suspending my disbelief. I am role playing in a lot of these games. I'm trying to escape reality. And the last thing I want to do is bring an aspect of reality with me that I'd actually really like to leave behind. I'm playing an elderly male wizard. I don't want to be in a space where, the rest of my party are all wearing chainmail bikinis, male, female, or anything else. I actually want to be in a space where it's about the combat. It's about the thing that it's about. We're talking about a game where we're raiding a library, or we're in space or something. None of that has any relevance. And I think leaving it behind completely and just having people doing the things that people do and being whatever it is they're being, that would be lovely. I could go on about that. I've certainly got a couple of stories where, sexualization crept into games to my enormous detriment. And, it is a thing that we as people have had to face previously as a result of game design choices that have been made. And it would be very positive if we could move away from that.
Now, there's a lot of really good points being made in the chat, and I'm flashing up like the most pertinent ones. Again, thank you to everyone contributing. We can't maybe explore every single one of these, but this is a fair point. Like when Maya talks about, sexualization can be empowering if it is, a choice that people make for themselves. But for sure, you don't want it to be the default. That is when it becomes an issue, when it seeps into everything. And Alex, suggests that we reinforce the ridiculousness of it with game mechanics, but if we do that, why even have it, frankly? Because if we were actually to have anyone wearing heels in a combat game, it would be an automatic downgrade on everything. Let's be honest, you're just going to want to wear flats, you're going to want to wear athletic shoes. And so at the point where you're wearing heels, it's, if you're playing to win, it's just going to be, if your game, if you want to allow people to take on that sexualization, it should be a choice. It shouldn't be the only thing. And B, yeah, I know Alex is just messing around, but if there's a bad thing, and obviously bad player choice. Why even have it in the game? And yeah, Maya says, let's talk about Wood Elves versus Dark Elves in Warhammer, where, yeah, you do have those two ways to go. Now, I guess this ties into something that John asked before we started, which, can we use that argument of, well, that's just the way my character is. That's not making a statement on men or women in general. Is that a valid defense? Kath?
I think that it is a valid defense depending on how it's used. I think that every person should be playable in a game. We should have complete creative freedom to be who we want to represent. And if that person is obnoxious or unpleasant or a difficult person to deal with, then that's acceptable as long as it's acceptable to the group. I've played some quite horrible characters, and that's quite cathartic in a way. But it's understanding that you are being unpleasant, and it's the acceptance of the group that, yes, I am representing something negative here. I am playing this grossly sexualized female, and this is a thing that I am going to play to. But it has to be with the consent and the understanding of the group, and the acceptance that this is a stereotype. It should not be a default. It should be a conscious choice. It comes back to that theme of conscious choice.
I totally agree, because if you choose to play a hypersexualized or sexualized character, you have to know that this is a choice and not default, because then it makes like women are only powerful if they are sexy. So this would limit the power of women like very drastically. I'm not saying that it's impossible to be sexy, but come on. This would like make our reach like very low, and yeah, this is not the way that we should do. Like it has to be like something that shows diversity. That's why representation and diversity matter, so we can have these different types of character, and all of them can be powerful in a way, and not only if they are sexy, if they are super strong, or so on.
Now, this is where I'm afraid that my game has not conformed to these rules, because my game has got 2 characters, and they are sexualized, because this is a game about courting and dating. And so it is a sexualized game. And yeah, if you don't like, there isn't the option in my game, because the artist has been said there's the female character and there's the male character, and they are the same person on every card. There's 2 characters in the whole game. So you don't get to, in fact, not only do you not get to choose, you don't even, you spend part of each game playing as the female, and then the rest of the game playing as one of the males. So yeah, just hearing all of these perspectives, I'm like, okay, my game's in a lot of trouble.
And for those who missed the start, John's game, Lady's Choice, is a game that's not yet out. It's unpublished, and John is having, this is part of what brought up this conversation. And I think that this is what it comes down to. Like, if you do have in your game all the representation of every single woman is a particular way, and then you've got to ask yourself why, because you are pushing towards a certain thing. And yeah, Kath, do you have a point to make?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to respond to that, because I think that we spoke before about conscious design choices, and actually, Jon, your game is addressing something. It is talking about, so it has something to say about this. So it's absolutely appropriate that the characters be sexualized. That's what the game's about, and that's completely and absolutely fine. I play it. I think that when we say that these things are endemic and they're overdone, it's because they're done in this utterly arbitrary, irrelevant way. So I just wanted to make it clear that I think that when it's appropriate, when that's the subject matter, when that's what we're discussing in playing this game, it's 100% appropriate, and it should be there, and that's what we're talking about in the game, and that's your design. That's what you have to say. So it's appropriate when it comes to your game. And I just wanted to make it really clear that I would play it, and that's not at all what I was getting at when I was saying that, there's a bit too much of that hanging around.
I
Now-
never played a Jon's game, so I cannot give a lot of opinion about it. But if it's a dating game, what is wonder is why they cannot be pansexual or so, because there are pansexual people in the world. But I don't know if it fits your game. Just something that I wondered.
Should I just quickly respond to that one? Yeah, okay. As I said, the very core of what the game is the fact that the male experience of dating is how can I make myself as attractive as possible, and that's it. That's all they're thinking about. Whereas the female experience is who should I choose? Like, guys aren't even like, they've made up their mind instantly who they want, and then it's all about how do I get them. Whereas, the female perspective is, well, these 4 guys have asked me out, and I'm sure 3 of them are assholes, but I don't know which 3. And so that was the experience I was addressing. And so that, because you've got those 2, then if you're pansexual as well, what game are they playing? This really is about the duality of those 2 situations.
And just to clarify, in case it isn't obvious, in this game, everyone is there. Basically, there's more men in any given round than women, and yeah, it's reflecting a very slight reality, and I think it would be good to address that this is, not everyone's, reality, if you know what I mean, as mentioned by chats here, because there's all sorts of. But for sure, if that is what the game is, then I think Jon's made a good point, that it is either a case of do it as it is or don't do it. Now, we go into when do we actually need to use gender at all? Is it better to use gender ambiguous characters? When do we use gender? So, Catherine, could you talk about when you're actually taking a step back, why do we even have gender?
It's a question I ask myself constantly in life. It's why I don't particularly identify myself as any particular gender. I think that is sort of the nirvana that I would like us to aim for as a society, e.g., if it doesn't involve genitalia, it's not relevant. That would be great. But we have to accept the realities as they stand. We have to accept the historical reality. We have to accept the experiences of the people currently living. I think that for the next generation coming through, their experiences will be more positive than perhaps ours have been. They are playing the games that exist today with the designs that are being made today. And so they will maybe not have some of the negative experiences that myself and Tali were talking about earlier. With that said, we do still need to talk about gender because it has affected the past. It has affected the personalities and the mental space and the histories of people who are alive today and who are designing games today. And so we do need to address those. And particularly with the historical perspective, any game that is historically representative, there is an onus on the designer to do their research to find out what the real situation, rather than just the received wisdom, actually was in that place that they're talking about. But then they do need to represent it. because actually, yes, experiences were different for males, for females, and without a doubt, experiences would have been very, very tangibly different for anybody who didn't identify as either of those in the historical context. So as designers, we need to really look at whether gender is relevant. If it isn't, strip it out. Let's have lots of gender ambiguity. I love it. I will always pick a gender ambiguous character if there is one in any context. It's absolutely my choice, but that's my choice. And we should represent everything. It's great. Let's do it.
Yeah, if it's like a game about a fantasy and something that is not historically accurate, it's not a problem to have like a female that is the captain of the ship and goes through the oceans and conquers blah blah blah. I don't know, like it wouldn't change. The history is already written, but we can change now the present. And change comes with like change of mind, change of culture. So putting some effort in going, like avoiding stereotypes, avoiding to assume what would this person do, like women do like this, men do like that. Like, of course there are like the differences, but we are so diverse and so different that we can put a little bit of this diversity in our games. Sometimes, like for me, when you play Double Dash, you pick the characters that you have. You only have the 4 cards in your hand, and then sometimes you have the gender-free character. But the thing that this character is there, this character exists. For me, as a designer of the game, it makes a lot of difference because my friends that inspired me to make this, they see themselves there. And their friends, they see themselves there, and this is what matters to me. So maybe like to consider this is like an important step, in my opinion.
Yeah, so gender is probably like, I mean, you put gender right up there with skin color or dress sense, or sort of like when writing the rules, it should be out. It shouldn't be mentioned in the rules. But as soon as you start producing art, that's when you need to make a decision. And you've got to decide, is it going to be obviously male? Is it going to be obviously female? Is it going to be deliberately ambiguous? Or is there going to be a gender in mind, but we're not playing to that gender, we're working with that gender? And it doesn't matter which of those options you pick, there's a downside, and you have to make that choice. And so inevitably gender will creep into your game. Even the lack of gender is still gender creeping into the game. Making a conscious choice to not have gender is still gender. Fog of Love did an amazing job of having absolutely every single thing about it gender neutral. And that was amazing, though it's still a gender choice, and it still draws a lot of attention to itself because all of the art, it can't have art on the cards. It's just impossible. So yeah, it doesn't matter what choice you make. There's a downside. So you just need to weigh up all your options, because even taking gender out of your game is putting gender in.
There's for sure a lot to be said for assumptions. Like, it's sad that if you don't mention the skin color of a character, people assume that they are white. If you don't mention the gender of a person, a lot of people, the majority of people, will assume that they are male. And Nicholas mentions, actually, I'm going to move myself, sorry, Catherine. So that's, most of Nicholas's games are abstract games, so everyone is themselves. And for sure, if you have any gender in those kinds of games, then what's on earth are you doing? Because if I'm playing photosynthesis, where's the gender in that? We're just trees, for gosh sake. But if you are having characters, I think that to not have feminine looking characters, to not have masculine looking characters, if everyone in your game is gender ambiguous, I mean, I wouldn't want every single game to be that way. Like, I would be happy for there to be like a small percentage of games that were that way. I would love there to be like more one deck dungeons that have no men represented. And, you know, if someone's like, hey, wait a minute, why is there no men? It's like, well, I'm not saying that the point isn't a particular game in isolation. The point is like the whole trend. The point is like, do you have this choice? Getting back to what Kath says. And for sure, I think that being willing to embrace, okay, let's have a very feminine looking character. Let's have a masculine character, but let's also have a bunch of gender ambiguous people as well. It's kind of that mixture that, and let's have some white people and let's have some darker skinned people, you know, like let's have a mixture. I think that's it. And Sate says that they are a female tree. Had to get it in there. Anyway, but let's talk about respectful things. Like if you've got imbalances or differences in representation, when can that be actually respectful and meaningful, Sally?
Respectful and meaningful research is very good to do redesigning a game, especially if you're going to choose between like making gender-free or gendered characters and so on. There are many games in the market that the choice was like having mostly white, mostly male characters. So considering it when you make a game, like, oh, there's enough of this in the market, maybe I can do something slightly different. And of course, giving some guidance from people there, from the communities you want to reach to, or you want to represent, or you want to bring to you. Like I wouldn't add my genderless character to my game without asking anyone and just assuming it that this is the best choice because no one is doing this. I would actually be very selfish to assume that this is the best choice. So I think asking people and consulting and researching is the best way to get to a respectful result, and not expecting that 100% of the people will agree with you. It's also good. But if 80% of the people disagree, so maybe you see a problem there and then you have to maybe reconsider.
Well, I hope that mine is an example of a respectful game. I'm trying to make it a respectful game, though I am constantly hearing from people that it is not a respectful game. So this is kind of why I'm here. You know, I'm trying to make it as respectful as possible, though I think I'm actually, a lot of this touches on the questions you're going to answer later, so I'll just make this a short answer.
So I think that games can offer a wonderful opportunity to be more respectful to others in our daily life. So when I'm presented with a game where I have character choices, I love the opportunity to play somebody who is not what I am. You know, I love the opportunity to really get into the skin of somebody who is actually, I don't have the opportunity to be in my everyday life. I could be a man. It's great. I've never been a man before, and it's wonderful. I mean, I get to be a man for a couple of hours. I get to be a person of color for a couple of hours. That's always a choice I will go for if I get the opportunity, because it's just stepping away from who I am and I'm putting myself into somebody else's shoes, actually. And that's a great opportunity to have, even if it's in the context of a silly, trivial game, or maybe a deeper and more serious game. How great. You know, this is an opportunity that's being presented to us to identify differently, even just for a short period of time, and with a group of people that we know and trust and hopefully are comfortable with. So I think that gives us all an opportunity to develop our respect.
Yeah, you've come up with some really good points about making sure that you've done that research, making sure that you've listened. And yeah, not having too much ego involved in your initial ideas and being willing to change those things. Because yeah, for generally, I'm going to say that whilst we might be in a situation to say, okay, this is the way it is, this is what I'm doing, but what if you didn't do it that way? I mean, Gil Hoover has the story of Dave started 3 games with this auction mechanism, and every one of those games, it got to the end, and I was like, hey, wait a minute, you know what? This auction mechanism, I'm going to take that out. And then the auction mechanism was a really good mechanic. It felt like it was a good part of the game, but then taking it out actually made the game stronger overall. And sometimes you need to be willing to kill your darlings. That's like a small part of the game. And yeah, specific to John's game, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to these really quickly because I think we've got time. Alex firstly asks, do you think it's enforcing stereotypes? I think that's the thing. Like, what action do you think what change do you think it's making in society? Because let's say you print your game 1,000 times. Let's say each of those games gets played an average of 2 times with 5 people each. That's maybe 10,000 people that have been touched by the game. And so that's going to be, and some of those games will be played more. Some of those games, let's be honest, will be played not at all. It's just a situation. I've got games that I know for a fact that one of my friends bought one of my games back in 2014 and still hasn't played it. And I'm sure there are some strangers who bought it who still haven't played it. But how is it changing minds? And yeah, could it be an alien dating game? Someone mentions, yeah, you could have look at Consentical, for example, where you've got the gender ambiguous person dating the alien. Would you like to respond to any of that, John, quickly?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to respond, because I've had so many suggestions. I said, oh, well, instead of men and women, it could be elephants and fruit, or it could be peacocks and their feathers, or it could be so many. Oh, no, what's the other? There was, it could be wealth and titles. So many options of how to get the gender out. But the whole point is that this is based on a very gendered concept. The whole thing, and it would be very similar to if there was, they say, look, I really do love your war game, but what if instead of shooting the opponents, you're instead dispensing a gift and they unwrap the gift and leave the battlefield? So it's essentially the same game, but we're just making it less problematic. And I'm thinking, yeah, but the people you're making it less problematic for are not the people who are going to enjoy this game. So yeah, it's the problematicness is very much baked in. Now, will it reinforce stereotypes? Well, let's just quickly go over some of the stereotypes we have. The stereotypes of men try to make themselves look better and don't have many options. Women tend to have more options. Is that bad to reinforce? I mean, that does seem to be the lived experience of people. And just that's what it has been like for me as a male, and lots of people who say they're a female are like, really? You don't have more than one option available at any given point? Like, I've had between 0 and 1 at every point in my life. It's like, oh, I know a woman I want, or oh, I don't know. No one wants me. And that's been my lived experience. Most, not all, but most men have that same lived experience. And I want to recreate that lived experience. And it kind of a sense of what I really wanted to bring to the game is have people, when they play the gender that they're not, because you'll have a turn and you play it, it's like, whoa, this is, wait, so you get to choose,
I think that Seats is making the point of, you say that this is the lived experience, but it's certainly not the lived experience of everyone. And
yeah, not of everyone, absolutely.
For sure. You're basing this on one dating person, and like, I don't know what, based on your story, like, what have you done, like, a lot of research to check if this is the case? And if so, no, is it worth kind of having a page where you, at the back of the rulebook, where you accept the deviations from this and you go into what the actual statistics are that you are aware of? Because I don't know, that might be a way.
Though you can just imagine that, you know, someone wrapping up this game, and you know, I'm kind of hoping it can be used as an icebreaker. That's, you know, even as people talking about that, is, wait, that card's worth that many points. I think it's, you know, I love it so much when a guy does this, or and that conversation that's flowing, and then to have that interrupted by this academic study that just dropped on them at the end of the rule book. I don't think it would serve the customers of this game. I don't think that it's really something that they're hoping will be in the box when they take it out.
I never had four people asking me out at the same time. I struggled with dating my whole life, and was very lucky when I met my partner, and that when we identified that we get along very well together, we decided to stay together because it was the best we could do. But we were not like, I wouldn't say that this would be representing me. Like, this game would not represent me or my love life or my husband's love life as a cis male. So I don't know. I think maybe, John, you have to own your choice at some point, and maybe justify it because you want to make the game because this is the way you want to do, and represents your experience, and that's the guidance you are having for your game design. But the broad topic of if you want to take representation in and out, it's a personal choice. For me, for my game, for example, since the beginning, I wanted to base the characters of my game in people in my life, so my friends and family, and they happen to be queer. So it was very easy for me to be inclusive because this is my reality. And I wouldn't expect the same thinking from people that are not so inside the queer environment as I am. But very few people know me or know that I am inserted in the queer universe. So I had to tell people about it. And I have to be around these people and having these people in my community. So maybe you need to talk to people that maybe have the same experience as you have, and then see what they have to tell. I don't know, like, this is my point of view, just my 2 cents here.
Kath, would you like?
Yeah, no, I have a slightly different perspective, actually. I have a different take on this. So I think that what you're doing is you are representing a very real experience. It's not everybody's experience, and that's possibly more true actually within the board game community than in most. But I do think it's a real experience. It's been my experience, I'll be really honest. It's unpleasant and frustrating and stressful, and there's value in presenting that. And I would actually compare it to you know, things like Monopoly, which I'm sure everybody knows the old story of how Monopoly was designed to illustrate a problem that existed in society, and actually through playing it to experience how dysfunctional this thing is. I think if you make the right design choices, because I haven't played it and I don't know the actual sort of in-depth game design, but I think if the game design is right, what it will serve to achieve potentially is to illustrate how ridiculous this situation is, how it doesn't work, how it doesn't serve either side very well, and potentially, you know, challenge people to rethink how we as a culture approach dating. You know, because it is stupid. We are, you know, one gender approaches the other, and the other sort of just has to pick from the people who approach them. Well, that's ludicrous. It doesn't work. Yeah. So you might be doing the world a great service through creating this, provided that you underline the problems with it rather than just presenting it as the way that things are and should be. So that's my 2 cents.
And yeah, of course, as I wrote in chat, Monopoly, originally Landlord's game by Lizzie McGee, trying to show the evils of the current taxation system. But it seems like Jon's game is slightly different, where it's not, it is a game made primarily for entertainment and for it's yeah, it's, and Xate makes the point of, hey, so why wouldn't it work as aliens? Because you could have this sort of alien has this sort of culture, this sort of alien has this sort of culture, and maybe that does get away from it. If you want to have a little bit of that hard hitting, okay, this is a way that it is for parts of, it's true for a portion of people. You know, I am going to, you know, it's a fact that, yeah, since I came out as a trans woman, I've definitely had more sexual attention than before. It is, that's just a fact. And it's, a lot of it is unwanted. A lot of it is literally physical harassment on the street, where people literally, while I'm unlocking my bike, you know, just after I finish shopping and then I'm going home, someone rushes over, crosses the street, and then grabs my arse, and then I'm actually feeling, what, do you know what I mean? It's really not a good position to be in. But for sure, it's definitely, there's a difference in what's going on. And I think that what I'm disappointed by personally is your disinclination to have what you see as a highbrow thing dropping in on people. Because to have something like that at the end of the rule sheet, that doesn't have to be something that impacts the game when people are trying to learn it. It can be a party game, but then at the end, you kind of acknowledge the reality of the situation and maybe start up the conversation. Like the fact that Bold Made, it's meant to be a simple party game, but then, yes, you get all the bios about all the women involved. Yes, it's meant to be a feminist product, and that's part of, you know, you can tell it's in the name, rather than Old Maid, it's Bold Made. But by having those bios, which, how many people will read that during the game? Well, actually, we did, and it's actually added to our game, because maybe for some people, having that conversation might be a really good part of that game if you want to ask people to talk about and challenge that stuff. Jon?
Oh, I was not objecting to including that stuff, because anyone who's read the rulebook will also already know that I've already, you know, there's some points where I just say, by the way, this is a mechanical consideration. I'm not making a comment, because I've got the LGBT edition coming up. And yeah, there's a bit in there where there was a mathematical situation for the game to work at all. There has to be the possibility of polygamous relationships, just because you can't have a heterosexual love triangle. But as soon as you throw LGBT in the mix, how do you resolve the triangle? And I just, well, you don't. It's a triangle. Leave it. And I had to actually put the note in, this is a mathematical consideration. This is not a commentary on the nature of LGBT relationships. And so, you know, I'm not at all opposed to having stuff like that, but it's what I was objecting to before was saying that I should have a page of it. And this is quite a short and simple game, and I don't want to have more commentary than I have rules.
Hi. I think that what you say is probably right, in that if you possibly can, as a game designer, any commentary, anything you want to say about society, you should, if you're really good at game design, be able to say through your game. You should be able to illustrate what's happening And it should be clear to the consumer if this is a thing that you're saying is a positive or is a negative. There are things that one cannot shoehorn into a game without ruining the game, and it's very valid to have those outlined at the end. I think there's always an educational opportunity to be had at the end of a rules leaflet, to sort of drill down a little bit more and say, why did you make this game? What is it you're trying to say? Let's just clarify this. But actually, most of the points can be made through clever game design and through the play experience of your players. So I think that's all I have to say.
I believe that maybe I understand it wrong, but what bothers me is that I don't know how much power the women have to choose the person they want to date. Like, they are given these options, and then are they happy with that? Like, do they want to see this? Because from my perspective, in my life as a woman, not everyone that actually wanted to talk to me or date me, harassed me, was actually a good interaction or someone that I actually wanted in my life. But this is another topic. Going to the gender topic, I think this could be made in a respectful way, using men and women. This is not a problem. It's just how the storytelling is going to go. How are you going to avoid stereotypes or empower your characters at some point? But this is a game design challenge. Maybe you don't have to make a page explaining it. Maybe the whole experience of the game shows the players how this goes. But I already said I didn't play the game. So, like, coming to the gender part, it can be okay using like men and women for this first edition or so on. But you have to make a game that is like kind of embracing it in a way that it's showing like why it's men or women, like why it makes sense the way that it is.
I'd actually like to, and thank you so much for this opportunity to correct a really common misconception. Because as soon as people just have a cursory glance at the rule book and go, hold on, as when you're a gentleman, you have certain things you can do, and when you're a lady, you have certain things you can do. The immediate conclusion is that men have more power and women have less power, and I'm empowering men and disempowering women. But if you actually read the rules of the game, it's the complete opposite. A complete opposite. Men have got, there's 4 gentlemen trying to get the same lady, and if you don't get her, you get nothing. Nothing at all for the game, for the round. That's it. 0 points. No redeeming things. So now, depending on the player count, determines what the ratio is, because there could be 2 and 4, 1 and 4, 1 and 2. But it's always just a guy struggling to get picked at all. But when you're being the lady, each gentleman you choose gives you a different amount of points, and there's always one where you've got a stack of tokens called All of Your Love to Give. And you have to give all of your love to give to someone. That's just the rules of the game. You have to. But you get to choose who. And if you choose the worst gentleman in the game, he takes it all for himself, gives you back nothing, and then takes more from the bank for himself for achieving that. And that is heartbreaking. And that's the response I wanted. Part of the message out there is, be very careful who you choose, because you may get nothing back. You give all of this stuff and give nothing. And originally, the love you have to give was, you give it from the bank. But no, I really wanted that symbolism of the lady having love, giving love, and then maybe getting some of it back. But if she picks the right gentleman, and only if she picks the right gentleman, does she give back more? Does she get back more than she gave? And yeah, the part of that's a mechanical consideration, and it was kind of a mechanism first, but after I saw the symbolism after, it's whether it's realistic or not, it just touches on a nerve, and it recreates that experience of just, and also even worse, and this has been my experience, when the other guy gets her and he's an asshole, and I was really good, and it's the drama I'm trying to create.
Kath, did you want to say anything?
Always. Yes, I think that you've got a couple of problems here that haven't been touched on yet. Partly, so you've got this situation, and it is, it is a situation that I have seen in myself and others. The problem you have is there isn't always a right gentleman. There isn't always one who's going to give you loads of points. There's often four who are going to take it all and take some extra from the bank. And is that reflected? What you're sort of guessing at there is that you've got this pool of people that you have to choose from. You can't choose anyone else because they haven't put themselves forward, which is obviously bizarre in itself, but that is the rules. But do you always have one bad one, two who are mediocre, and one who's great? No, you don't. And so that's sort of a problematic way to put it forward. One possible design choice that you could consider, because I'm not so sure about this whole elephants and fruit or aliens and all that stuff, because I think in a way that devalues any social commentary that you have, because it almost sort of says, well, this is the way it is in this alien society and let's just accept it. I think you do need to have it as social commentary if you're going to proceed with this project. But perhaps you could frame it in a historical context, take it back. I'm not sort of talking about the 18th century or something, but if you were to take this back to the 1980s, something like that, where this was a lot more endemic, a lot more accepted, and say, look, this is how dating worked in the 80s, and you can do some fun stuff with padded shoulders and cell phones.
1890.
Okay. Oh, you already are historical. I'm so sorry. That's my ignorance. But yes, I don't know.
I would like to, because I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking that whilst it's been interesting kind of deconstructing Jon's future game, and I think that the potential of extra information in rules, I'm coming from a perspective of I've got a game that I fit the rules on the back and front of a card, and I do have, an entire page, or like I put that into 2 pages just so that it would be more approachable, so that I could have more info and give just credits to all the people. If my game were social commentary, when Seize the Power comes out, okay, that's not a party game, but you better believe that I would expect a good chunk of that rule sheet to be text that helps people understand what's going on, because games can be misinterpreted, films can be misinterpreted, and having something that, look, there's this thing of, okay, these things should stand alone, but why not have that director's commentary that explains this is what's going on? I would like to push past that. I'm sorry I'm not giving you any time to respond. And hello, Monique. It is super lovely to see you. But we've talked about what is respectful. I do want to flash up Vicky's thing from a while back, and Vicky says, I think although it's important to be diverse, it's good to remember that not every gender neutral or otherwise agender person is or wants to be androgynous looking. There's so much about people that we can't just assume from looking. Representation is such an interesting, difficult space as an illustrator, so I think the lesson to not assume too much on looks is more of a cultural shift we need to make in general. 100%. Now, I want to say, push past this and ask my 2 most important questions. Firstly, are games a reasonable medium for exploring difficult concepts, whether it's gender stereotypes, whether it's bigotry or hatred, or do you think games are a reasonable medium for this? Kath?
Yes, they absolutely are. I think they are possibly one of the most effective mediums. They are also one of the most difficult to perform. It's a lot easier to explore a complex topic in the medium of a visual or an auditory medium. You can make a film, you can write a book, and that's a much simpler way to get your point across. But however, an incredibly talented game designer can, by making people actually go through the process can actually make their point so much better, I think, in some respects. So yes, I think they're an extremely valuable medium for getting social commentary across.
Yeah, exactly what Kath said. I've got nothing to add to that. That sums it up perfect.
Yeah, games are part of the culture, and games can help changing the culture. It's like a part of the society. So exactly like Kat says, like it is. The games are very relevant for change.
Now, we've already talked about, you know, this a little bit, but do you have anything else to add? I mean, is it okay to use sexism to make fun of sexism? Oh, and I should add my own points. Like, I believe games 100%, as you can tell by the fact that I'm working on Seize the Power. But anyway, Kath, sexism to make fun of sexism.
Yes, but we have to be very careful with it and make it abundantly clear that that's what we're doing. We're not simply perpetrating or perpetuating the same stereotype. It has to be clear that this is a send up and not an approval.
This is actually a question that I ask because I don't know the answer. And yeah, thank you for asking it for me.
We have to see who is actually laughing at it. If the oppressor is laughing, so it's not a good joke. But if the oppressed, like they see this and they look and they say, yeah, it makes sense, then you're doing this good. I was listening to a podcast from two trans women that I love, and they were talking about this representation, and they were saying that they love this thing that cis people love to put and draw trans women with a very, very cis-like looks, but sometimes they just want to look trans because that's their identity and that's relevant. And this can be like disrespectful for men, for example, that look and say, these women looks like a man. But then they say like, yeah, but I'm a trans woman. I'm not you and I'm not her. I'm me. And they use this as a way of making joke about them, like, we look like men, but they were doing this so politely and so intelligently that you understand that the jokes are on them, on the bigotries, on the sexists, and not on them, the trans women.
I mean, I think that we're all agreed that it can and almost should be done, but in a very careful way and with as much consultation as you possibly can. And I'm a big proponent of sending something out into the world, but then doing a second edition that's better, but for something as meaningful as this, making sure that you do go to all the conventions, all the people, send it round. And I know that this is a problem when you might have a game that requires so many people. Monique says, humor punching up is all good, but the thing is that humor doesn't always translate. Monique says, they love Tally's points. Who is doing the laughing? Do they get the joke, or is it not clear enough? Exist jokes, even those that punch up, are way too difficult. They aren't always obvious enough to target the majority in that way. And that's why I believe, and we come back to my personal viewpoint, that you need to have this commentary as part of the rulebook to make it clear. Now, the question is it appropriate to use gender stereotypes if your intent is just 100% entertainment? Kath?
No. And that is all I have to say. No.
Jon?
Oh, that's got me nervous here because I do want my game to be entertaining. And I don't want, like, I do know that there are some people who really set out the design choice of this is a game that you must suffer through. And you must experience the suffering to truly appreciate it. And by the way, I love those games. Undertale, Spec Ops: The Line, they are not fun. And that's the point. But that's not the angle I've taken with my specific design. I do want the experience to be fun. And I do want the experience to even be fun
I'm
for the
just going
people
to interject
lost it on.
that to say that I'm not talking about having a game like the original Landlords game, which was not meant to be fun until it got changed by the Quakers, who've never been individually credited, sadly, for the development of that million-selling game. But what I'm talking about is a game that is 100% entertainment, because for sure, Seize the Power, I want it to be entertaining in some manner. I want it to be a game that people are looking forward to playing again. It's not like Misery, the experience. There is definitely some moments of drama and misery, but what we're talking about is without that commentary, just being pure entertainment.
Yes, so it is entirely possible that someone could pick up this game, play the game, enjoy the game, and miss all of that. And I'm okay with them missing it. I don't feel that this is a message that no one may leave without getting this message. I'm okay for it to fly over someone's head. And so for them, their experience will have been a game that was pure entertainment. Now, some other people who are a lot more analytical in nature and love to pick things apart, I'd like to think I'm ready for them. I'd like to think that I've put stuff in there for them to really chew on and think about and provoke conversation. But yeah, some people will have the experience of this as just entertainment, and I don't personally have a problem with that.
Tully.
Can you please repeat the question?
So do you think
I
it's
don't know if I understand
okay?
it
Do you think it's appropriate? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's appropriate to use gender stereotypes as a medium for pure entertainment?
No, I don't think so.
And yeah, Monique says, just because it's difficult doesn't mean it can't be done well. I think we are often too used to oppression and cruelty as marginalized people that it can take time to come around and think that just maybe the joke isn't on us for once. I would like to see this done more, but it is difficult. I think for me, this ties into flying over someone's head, and someone experiencing this as pure entertainment is why I do believe that there is room to, even if it isn't in the game, as liner notes, as you used to have on CDs. Like, let's bring back that kind of thing for board games. Let's make it the standard. I'm not saying let's go all Phil Eklund on it. Let's not make convoluted rules that take 2 days to, sorry, maybe, sorry, Phil Eklund is a lovely person, but we have to admit that those rule sheets are a bit more convoluted, and they maybe could be. But I would suggest let's have the rules here, and then the kind of liner and everything, and let's say, hey, by the way, this is what I'm actually trying to be. Because you've got to be honest with yourself. If you are using this to make as a medium to explore, yeah, this is where I really struggle with it. And it doesn't seem, it feels like you have to accept some degree of responsibility, because someone who does take this as pure entertainment might then, you know, accept these things in their mind subconsciously. They don't challenge these things. Someone who, if you were to play Train, let's say Train as pure entertainment, for those who don't know, yeah, I mean, I would flash up a sad stuff alert, but I'm going to be talking about the Holocaust and Nazis for 30 seconds. So Train is a game where it's a pick up and deliver game. You take people into trains to take them to a place, and you find out their destinations, and at some point in the game, maybe it's when you turn up Auschwitz, you realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually sending all these people to concentration camps. And then the game Train, which is on Board Game Geek, you can read a little bit about it there, but not an awful lot, because there was only ever one copy of it produced. It's a game where it's not, I would not call it a game. If you call that a performance piece, where the game is, once people see that, how do they react to that new knowledge, and how are we? And if someone had played that game and been like, okay, I'm going to try and send all these people around and get the best points, and then the theme is just lying in the background, that almost feels like it's, yeah, quite harmful. And Jon had a very interesting comment earlier on talking about violence in games, how maybe are we treating violence, are we allowing too much violence in our games? Is it that because, Jon, actually, we literally for 1 minute, can you, as quickly as you can, explain this thing?
Yeah, so I was just quickly drawing some parallels between sexism and violence, and how, all of the parallels between them. So a lot of them have received pushback. A lot of them have said you should not have this in any game ever, under any circumstances. Though the thing is, the pushback for violence was a lot longer ago, whereas the pushback for, against sexism is a lot more modern. And so violence has kind of reached the point where it's like, yes, we understand that you're offended by violence, so we're going to play these really violent games in private. See ya, bye. And then they go off to play their violent games privately without, anyone who could be offended. But when it comes to sexism in games, there's a bit more of a, well, no, not only do I not want to play, but I don't want this to be published. In fact, I want this to be destroyed. I want you to take it out of your home. And it's so much more invasive, and so much more we need to actively remove this game from society. Whereas violence in games is more of, no, it's not my taste. And yeah, I haven't been able to resolve for myself personally why there's such a difference in response between those two things. I'm not saying that one response is right and one response is wrong, but why the disparity?
Very quick, Kath.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to say there's not a direct equivalence between violence and sexism, though. You would be, the one thing is something that exists that is legitimate. There are legitimate places for violence. There is no legitimate place for sexism. There's a legitimate place for sex, and that's absolutely fine. And that is the equivalent to violence. There are games that will involve sex and that maybe we can put away, and that's fine. And I don't want to play them, but you can play them. But when it comes to sexism, I don't want you to play them either, because that is not a legitimate thing that should exist, except with the caveats that we've already discussed.
I think this is a really good place to close it on. We have talked a lot about stuff. A quick note, I got messaged by Jess during this thing, who said that they will probably be popping in around now. They've had a lot of trouble getting off this mountain and whatnot, but it's been a really lovely chat. I think that we started off with silly chats about Hades and Doggo Dash and Fog of Love. Congratulations, Tully. We then went on to talk about the roles we play and rule sheets and whether it's on purpose and representing ourselves in abstract games and being the change that we want to see. Don't accepting things just because this is the way we are. Thinking about what is the default. And sex and sexy, it should be a choice. It shouldn't be something that's foisted upon you. Punching up and punching down, who is it aimed at? And things when it's flying over your head. And for sure, violence in games would be an interesting topic for another day, and having those extra info in rules would be an interesting topic. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to be talking with Mike Nudd, and that will fall into the line of, is Mike Nudd a designer or a developer of Dice Hospital? It depends on how you define that, and that's why I believe that credits are. Anyway, we'll get into all of that tomorrow. But I believe that this has been an unresolved topic. We have hopefully it will have given some people a lot of food for thought, and hopefully we can have another discussion on this at some point in the future, in a few weeks' time, maybe, to nail down on some of these things. And yeah, I want to give we've got 5 minutes before I have to wrap up. I'm going to give my links and then try and find everyone else's links. So my links are down there: stuffbez.com, Big Cartel, twitter.com/stuffbez, instagram.com/stuffbez, twitch.tv/stuffbez. If you want to find me, I stream every day 10 a.m. UK time, and also Tuesdays at 8 p.m. UK time. All the episodes are on YouTube. Discord, please join the Discord. If you want to have any discussions about this, feel free to share any of that on either the discussion channel or the BBBB channel, so we can talk about gender and inequality and any other, like, let's talk about racism and sexism and all sorts of xenophobia. Please come and join in that conversation. I invite you to do that. Vicky says, at least with video games, violence was definitely this should be a no one's house thing for many people for years, like video nasties. We've got Monique talking about Ladies and Gentlemen or Billionaire Banshee, and yeah, then Ben mentions that Billionaire Banshee does need some social construct before playing. That easy, comfortable feeling between friends might not always exist. And yeah, this is the thing, that sexism is not even acknowledged by many people. It's more of an ingrained thing that a lot of people ignore. Yeah, historical violence. Yeah, sorry. I might not do the whole all the outro sections, for which I apologize. But let's have final thoughts. Let's start with Tali, because you are visible.
Thank you. It was a very, very good conversation and a very broad topic. I hope I could have I brought some insights. I totally got some insights from this conversation as well. And I would recommend for people that are making games, like, taking consideration representation, diversity. You know that we are in a sexist, racist world, so try not to reinforce this in your games. And yeah, try to be a cool person and nice to everyone and respectful. And that's what I have to say now. Thank you very much. And yeah, see you the next time.
Okay. Jon?
Yeah, I think the only real final thoughts I want to leave with is that this isn't final. Like, there is so much more to the discussion. There is so much more for me to learn. And there's also, I think, so much more context, that was missing from the conversation that could have changed everything radically if more information was known. And I hope this discussion never ends. I'd love to keep chatting forever. And it's especially useful for me professionally for this game.
And Kath?
Yeah, I mean, likewise, I could happily talk about this all day, and I think it would be brilliant to actually do a little bit of a play test of your game, because I think that would provide a bit more context of where it is you're trying to go.
I can provide a work in progress link for everyone if you want. Sorry.
I already linked.
Yeah, that'd be really great. Thank you. I know you did. I've been a bit rubbish at reading the links. Yeah, there it is. That would be fantastic. And I think that would really, this is potentially a topic that I'd be really happy to revisit in the future. There's just so much to say. And yeah, it's been really informative for me as well to get the different perspectives.
And thank you, everyone, for being awesome. We didn't get everyone in the comments was super respectful, which I massively appreciated. And thank you for everyone coming along. Yep, if you want to, Jon, same, if you want to kind of go into my design chat, then feel free to link your thing there and people can jump on. We have a minute before I have to go, so I will say that if you want to share anything, feel free to share it in the comments. Otherwise, next streams, look at my streams. That's what I'm looking forward to. Please share and spread the word. And yes, I wish you all lots of good health and thoughtful and kindness. I guess that's what I wish. proper. I'm sorry, I'm not having the final closing over to everyone, but yeah, thank you, everyone. You are lovely, and that is where I'm going to end it. So, unless anyone has anything left to say, does anyone have anything left to say? No? Okay. So, in that case, bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Do. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye.